Today is the first Sunday after Christmas, and the church, spends a month building up to the Christmas moment. For the U.S. and for its economy, the celebration starts in October. And the high point of the season, maybe the high point of the entire year, is a magical night in the sanctuary with candles and our favorite Christmas carols. And families depart to open presents and practice their Christmas traditions. And when it's over, we all want to close the door and just move on. Move on to New Year's parties and football games. And lost in time and meaning are some interesting and really theological important lessons about Jesus. First, Christmas is not supposed to begin in the church until December 25th. And it ends on January 6th, which is Epiphany. And I always bring this up at Christmas time. In the early America, Puritans sought to ban Christmas because they said if you put too much focus on Christmas, people will forget the more important celebration of Epiphany. What did they know? Epiphany is when the Magi actually come to visit. It's the Epiphany we celebrate the baptism of Jesus and the wedding at Cana. All these events that reveal who Jesus really is and who he's going to be for. Christmas to Epiphany is 12 days, and it's why we sing the 12 days of Christmas. The Christmas story is known because Christmas Eve is all about telling the story over and over again. The post-Christmas story, it's not so familiar because we move on to other things. But I think the missing story, the part that does not make it into the children's plays, matters, and I think we can learn from it, and I'm going to tell you why. But first, let's talk about LeBron James and Michael Jordan. And Lance, I'm so glad you're here today because I know I have a true basketball fan with me. But we're going to talk about Michael Jordan and LeBron James, not who is the greatest or the individual greatness, but their journey to becoming known to the world. Because the reading today is all about the journey to becoming known. Now, I'm a huge LeBron James fan, but I'm more of a person that has admiration than a typical fan. And my admiration for LeBron James is his relationship with Akron, Ohio. I've not found an equivalent in Minnesota to tell the story of Akron. It might be, sometimes I think about the old stockyards down in South St. Paul might be a good story, but South St. Paul is infinitely better than Akron, okay? And maybe it's the farm crisis when all those small communities got devastated by the farm crisis in the 80s. Akron was one of the major backbones of the American Industrial Revolution. And during the 70s and 80s, it was just like every day you woke up, a new plant was closing. And every time a new plant closed, 5,000 to 10,000 people lost their jobs. And these were people that had really no other alternatives for employment. So it was absolutely devastating. When LeBron was younger, Akron was the epitome of what we called the Rust Belt. The story LeBron James shares with everybody is how the whole city of Akron rallied around him as a child. I mean, he was a potential statistic, a young black male from a single-parent home, an easy target for gangs, an easy target for the drug business, but everyone around him saw something special in LeBron James. At an early age, and that whole community, black and white, surrounded him, protected him, and they said, all bad elements, you keep away from this one. And LeBron has never forgotten that or how much he owes them. Throughout his entire career, even when he took his talents to South Beach and moved to Miami, even when he moved to LA, LeBron remained committed to Akron, funding scholarships, being a presence in the community, creating events where celebrities came in droves to simple little Akron, Ohio. This LeBron James's I Promise School is still nurturing education, college scholarship, volunteerism, and community support, even though he lives in LA. Without the community-wide support LeBron received as a child, as a teen, he most likely would have become a sports statistic. I mean, great athletes from broken homes crash and burn in front of our eyes all the time. You know, when LeBron James was in 8th grade, 5,000 people were showing up to watch him play basketball games. By the time he gets in 10th grade, they had to move his high school games to the University of Akron because the 9,000-seat gym couldn't hold everybody who wanted to be there. When he's 17 years old, he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they call him the chosen one. 2 lessons we learn from LeBron to better understand Jesus. 1, the second half of the 2nd chapter in Luke is about the Jewish community wrapping their arms around Jesus and his parents and just embracing him. Simeon and Anna exemplify this statement. This one, they say, is special. This one is ours. Second lesson, Jesus' entire life will be spent serving the community that embraced him in that temple. Modern Christianity, the one that started to form when the Roman Empire embraced the faith, too often represents Jesus as a destroyer of Judaism. That is not an authentic reading of history or of Scripture. The faith and mission of Jesus was never intended to be an alternative, or worse, an enemy of Judaism. Now, unlike LeBron James, Michael Jordan was never a potential statistic. He came from a very stable, middle-class family with 2 parents. Both of his parents were smart, they were hardworking, and he grew up around extended family. His family was everything to Michael Jordan. And if you watch the whole series about him signing his major deal, groundbreaking deal with Nike tennis shoes, it was his mother and father that he turned to for those decisions. In 9th grade, when LeBron James was filling high school arenas, Michael Jordan was cut from the team. He was too small and not good enough to play. In his sophomore year, he was just lucky to make the JV team. In the beginning, Jordan was not a natural talent. He had to work at it. And the pain of rejection is something that would drive him for the rest of his career. Even when he gave his Hall of Fame speech, that rejection was still visible. He carried it with him for his life. By his senior year, he was noticed and recruited to play at North Carolina. And even though people started to recognize his talents in college, no one at the time considered him the greatest, not even the potential to be the greatest. Michael Jordan was the 3rd person taken in the NBA draft. And even Rod Thorne, who drafted him, said, our first option, the one we really wanted, was Hakeem Olajuwon. We took this Jordan, we knew he was going to be a good player, but he's always very honest. I never thought he'd be the greatest. Now this is a very hard thing to admit, okay? His breakout moment, his epiphany as the greatest happened on a jump shot in Cleveland, Ohio, and destroyed and gutted my soul. But I'm moving beyond it, okay? 2 lessons, though, that we learn from Michael Jordan to better understand Jesus. Michael is from a traditional family, a family that practiced traditional family things. What we read in the 2nd half of the 2nd chapter of Luke is not something special nor prophetic, apart from the words of Simeon and Anna. The story is about 2 Jewish parents doing exactly what every Jewish parent does with a newborn child. Jewish parents circumcise their male children. They bring them to the temple to dedicate and to purify them. And later on, they will bring their family to Jerusalem every year for Passover. They were doing what was customary under the law, meaning they were being a very traditional Jewish family. And it starts to make sense when you read about this later on in Paul in Galatians. He says, "But when the fulfillment of time came, God sent his son, born through a woman and born under the law. This was so he could redeem those under the law and so that we could be adopted." Second, unlike LeBron and the story presented at Christmas, Jesus was not recognized as something great when he was being raised. Shortly after his circumcision and blessing, Jesus disappears from the scene. Nothing is remarkable about him until he is baptized. And this is really important because it shows how deeply Jesus moves into the human condition. It was always understood. Jesus understands through experience what it means to be human. If he always understood himself as special and different and set apart, if he always, in the world around him, always saw as the fulfillment of God on earth, then he would never understand us. It's kind of like LeBron James's children. They can hear the stories of his father, but his father growing up poor, his father growing up connected to this blue-collar working community, but they will always grow up in wealth. They will never truly know what that means. And that's exactly, by the time Jesus is baptized as an adult, he has spent decades going to Jerusalem for Passover. He has seen the lepers standing outside the temple, the poor and the outcast rejected from full participation in the community. And he sees the people he loves not being included. He has witnessed the behavior of religious leaders. And because he has dwelled with the people, he knows their problems and he knows how to speak to them in a way that the people will listen. One last lesson from LeBron and Michael. Sports fans love to debate who is the greatest. And when it comes to basketball, you are either a LeBron person or you're a Michael supporter. You love one and criticize the other. Rarely will you hear someone say, "Oh, I've been blessed to watch two of the most exceptional talents in the history of basketball." It's more common to hear one say, "Oh, I love Michael, that LeBron is terrible," or "I love LeBron, that Michael is terrible." And this shows us how our minds work. We are either or people, not both and. With Jesus, this is not the case. Jesus is driven by a both and commitment. To us humans, it is either Christianity or Judaism. And we have a 2,000-year history of violence, of fighting this either or position. Jesus is both Christian and Jew because we are both creatures of the one Creator. And even Simeon said it in this text today, "I have seen salvation with my own eyes. It will be a revelation for the Gentiles and glory for the Jews." We listen to Jesus' lessons which seek to expand the depth of God's love and compassion for all creatures. Jesus is from a traditional family, and yet he reaches to those who are from non-traditional backgrounds, embraces them and loves them just as they are. We constantly divide people into good or bad, in or out, heaven or hell. And it always leaves me wondering, if God was so committed to kicking people out, why would God come to earth? Why would God go through the pain of the human condition if ultimately he just wanted people to like him more? Jesus' birth, the life, death, and resurrection is for our eyes. So we can say with what Simeon said, we have seen salvation with our own eyes. Salvation is experienced when we feel the warmth of God's arms wrapped around us, not because of our potential, but because we, all of us, are just simply God's children, the way we're made. Now, the invitation for us as we move into a new year is the same for every year, is to practice the art of embracing so that all might see salvation. Amen.